Hey everyone, Brian Christian here with Heavy Revy TV, and I'm excited to come on. I'm about 2 minutes early, but hey, what's 2 minutes, right? Usually I'm late. So I wanted to come on here and talk about consciousness and subconsciousness. I know many are going to be coming on here, and please like and share, and let's see where we get today. This is a subject that I'm very familiar with at certain levels, but I'm starting to come into another side of it. And so, if you hear that electricity shooting in the background, that would be my fly swatter where the gnats are getting electrocuted. We got a gnat problem over here in the south. Oh, I tell you, this is why I don't normally live in the south this time of year. That's what traveling is for. You can move your RV and go wherever you want to go. But we're going to be talking about consciousness and subconsciousness and why this is so vitally important. Why is it so important that we understand how the mind works? Because every truth you cling to will either operate in your ego or in your true identity. And it all depends on the way in which you perceive yourself, the way in which you perceive your environment, the way in which you perceive God, other people, so on and so forth. So I decided to do a little bit of looking up here, just scientific stuff on consciousness and subconsciousness. And it goes in alignment with what I was already sensing and seeing when it comes to why do we have consciousness and subconsciousness. First and foremost, I don't believe subconsciousness is something that's going to stay subconscious. I believe that eventually all of our subconsciousness will be consciousness as we're constantly shifting, changing, renewing the mind, going from glory to glory, and coming into higher levels of awareness of the truth and of reality. Okay. So, what's vitally important about understanding the mind, and I don't mean just intellectually understanding it, but understanding how your mind is moving within your life, how it moves through intentions, how it moves through inspirations, how it figures out certain elements and things, and why it figures it out the way it does is really important to unlocking not only your theme of what you're called to manifest and maybe give to others in your destiny, but it also will help you understand what's going on in the midst of contradictions and how you can actually utilize your contradictions to increase your consciousness or awareness of the subconscious workings of the mind. So, just a quick overview of consciousness and subconsciousness. Whenever you become conscious of an idea, you did not work that out in your conscious mind. It was worked out in your subconscious mind. And when your subconscious believed it had enough evidence, enough information, enough panoramic view to connect all the dots, is when all of a sudden you are aware of an idea consciously. So, consciously, you did not try and figure out any idea. Consciously, you became aware of the idea that was working without the need of your five senses, without the need of your ego, without the need of your conscious conclusion. And so this is pretty amazing, actually, to understand that you're wired to make most of your decisions, 99% of them, subconsciously, in which your consciousness catches an idea from that subconscious that it thinks it worked it out consciously, and then might add to it. And it's usually the adding to of our 1% of consciousness in the subconscious decision making process. Oh, that was a long word. That it actually is where we end up sabotaging ourselves. It's our 1 cent worth. Instead of our putting in our 2 cents worth, we're putting in our 1 cent worth. Hey, good to see you, Christina. And so we don't need our 1% add on for the subconscious to make all the decisions. Now, I think there is a beginning place that we are coming to in the posture of bringing our subconscious conscious to begin to see some of the mysteries of how the mind operates, how it works things out, as well as the lenses that the subconscious is presenting itself through. So you have the subconscious and its raw and real self, okay? And then you have lenses that are within the subconscious that the conscious has buried there based in traumatic events, based in conclusions about yourself consciously that you didn't want to face. So it was repressed subconsciously and kind of became the lens in which your whole subconscious is trying to communicate. And this is why it's important that the lens over the subconscious, or influencing how your conscious now views subconscious decision making, is what has to change first. This is why we get circumstances and events and all of that, because your subconscious is so smart, because it's living within the mysteries not only of your identity in the spirit, but your eternal memories, or your the intentions of divinity that have been stored there. If you want to say all of your journeying in the Ancient of Days before the beginning, you could put it that way. I'm saying certain phrases so that it makes sense for many that are still viewing their life through a timeline of time and space and matter. But what we have to understand is the matter, the physical realm that you're experiencing, physical matter, okay, that you're experiencing, you're handling actually allegorically, externally, and literally subconsciously. So everything around you is actually manifesting your subconscious in a parable form, because your subconscious mind knows that there is a lens of conclusion and illusion based in trauma, based in lies we believed at an experiential level or at an emotional level, and cannot directly just speak the truth to your conscience to where your conscience will actually believe it. So your consciousness, and I think we can see this where if I was to tell you that you've been hearing from God the entire time, but you took it as your own mind, you took it as just a thought. How many times did we get a thought that came into our mind that we didn't really pre-think it, but it just emanated out of our subconscious, and we just kind of negated it as fantasy, as imagination? Oh, I don't know where that thought came from, because it doesn't make sense to the conscious conclusion that has been wrapped into the visible physical realm as our ultimate reality. And so we're so caught into the taste, touch, hear, see, feel dimension of conclusion and logic based on our culture, based on what we've been taught through knowledge, and also where the conscious intellect has learned to protect itself by hiding traumatic events and deceiving itself. It is very difficult for the logical mind to communicate directly with the subconscious and actually unite with it and believe like it, or believe from that. Sandra says, so I'm going to post this up here because I'm going to try to answer some questions as I go along. So is that why things are brought to our minds like puzzles? Definitely. We get it like a puzzle. We get pieces at a time. If you were to see things through the eyes of spirit, in which all of the knowledge of God is stored in the subconscious as a mystery hidden until the appointed time of unveiling, if you were to see it from that place, you would see the end from the beginning as a now embrace and interaction that had no beginning or end and had no timing of expression. It would all just be flowing, kind of like what scientists say, that if you were to be able to view the universe from above it, in a sense, outside of a time-space perception, you would see past, present, and future all moving together in the now. It would actually be forming one person interacting in a now embrace, not a bunch of people living through generations. This is why in Scripture we will always see that which is known as many summed up as one. For instance, Ephesians, when it says, till we all come to the unity of the faith, to a perfect man. That's why when you hear about the only begotten Son of God, Jesus is not referring to his individual humanity. He's referring to all mankind in him as light and life, John chapter 1. And it was life, and the life was the light of all mankind. In fact, it was the many that are as one that gazed into an awareness, that saw that awareness as matter, as visibility, as space and time, and manifested that many as one person known as Jesus at an appointed time. And that appointed time is a now place known as the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, Revelation 13, that is now echoing into our awareness, and is seen as an event, but is simply that which has always been in the mind of God, the demonstration of love laid down. Okay, love laying its life down. That's why we're here. Okay, wasn't really about fixing you. It was about awakening you to who you've always been. Now, when I read on news today, medical news today, Michael Shadlin, a PhD, said this: essentially, the act of becoming consciously aware of a decision conforms to the same process that the brain goes through to complete a decision, even a simple one such as whether to turn right or left. Now, this is summed up in understanding evidence accumulation. And evidence accumulation is not conscious, even though we become consciously aware. It is subconscious. Okay. And so our decisions are happening subconsciously. And some of those subconscious decisions are based in what the consciousness concluded on, repressed. And so this is where we find the mixture of subconsciousness, where our triggers are stored, the lies we believed about ourselves are stored, and they're kind of the lens over the top of all the subconscious beliefs that go into the mysteries of God, knowing all things. 1 John 2:20, you have an unction and you know all things. All the revelations that you get from the Holy Spirit are coming up from the subconscious. I know some will say, well, it's coming out of your spirit. But we have to understand that our humanity, or mankind, has compartmentalized through its twisted version of consciousness and subconsciousness, has compartmentalized us into three parts: body, soul, and spirit. When in reality, we are actually spirit slowed down at 3 speeds. Genesis 1 talks about that. You'll have God saying, let there be light, which is actually be light. All right. So that's us as light. Jesus is the light. We are the light. Who we are, spirit is light. In quantum physics, we are simply subatomic particles of strings of light. And so us as light being moving at the speed of light, and then we have the spirit hovering over the face coming up out of the waters or out of the deep. And so you have visibility and you have hovering. And so that which slows down slower than the speed of light, which is really sound, when it hovers, it brings forth form. So formation is light slowed down to hovering sound that now forms expression. So you have that which is moving at the speed of light, at the speed of thought, and the speed of expression. So the spirit hovering is that which is considered a aha moment of that which is emphasized in knowing all things in a now place that brings forth expression. That is your third dimensional experience. So the third dimension is not what we experience externally. We think it's, okay, we do experience it externally, but it is a mirror reflection of what we have concluded upon ourselves internally, consciously, through our historical experience of life that has been reduced to a physical dimension, in our forgetfulness of who we truly are, or in our duality of who we're not that we've settled for. we have built this grid, and through this grid, we are now attempting to define our lives. Now, in that, we think we're living in a third dimension because of the world around us. But the world around us is a reflection of the subconscious within us that is simply presenting our conclusion to us based in where we're at. Now, the great thing about this is God's not going to speak to you Chinese unless you speak Chinese. So just like in the New Testament, where Jesus is meeting that culture where they're at, where they're focused on external demons, and the world around them is a battle, and they're coming to Jesus saying, set us free from all of these demons and all of these things. Jesus is coming saying, well, the enemy comes, religion comes, wrong interpretation of your life comes, condemnation comes, but it has nothing in me. So none of that is actually in me, is what he's saying. It's an external thing that's being projected out of your mind, but I'm going to meet you where you're at in what you believe. How many times? I mean, Jesus said, there are many things I want to tell you. You cannot bear them now. So he met them in what they believed, and he brought truths through what he believed to bridge them to begin to come out of the limitations that they had placed upon themselves through religion and not understanding what they were actually projecting. So everything around you is a parable of you. Everything around you. Now, when I say a parable of you, it's either a parable of who you are or what you've settled for, depending on the context. So it's going to be based in different emphases and seasons that you are experiencing the Father restoring your memory into the now, which is everything you're actually experiencing. So all of your memories, subconsciously and consciously, are being summed up and being projected out of you as scenery, as circumstances, as relationships. Now, again, don't go crazy with what I'm saying here. And when your friend comes over, just tell them they're an optical illusion of your subconscious. They might take that personally. Okay. So we're utilizing this at certain levels. At other levels, we're interacting in as mankind, as matter. And we can interact at that level when our identity is solidified in the deeper understanding of what I'm bringing forth here, in which we are seated in Christ, in the heavenly Christ, in heavenly places. All right. That all our blessing is already there. Everything we need is already in us, and we're going within. So going within is not about you trying to picture a Casper the Friendly Ghost spirit in you and trying to figure out some castle kingdom that's in you. Now, you might be able to use that visualization as a bridge, but you're going into the subconscious place of what makes you tick and getting past the conclusions of human thinking that has rested in you believing that matter, time, and space is your reality, or your ultimate reality that now dictates who you are. So the moment you're no longer entangled with the cares of that life and the tribulation of that world, you're able to begin to enter a spiritual mind. Now, what's great is the Father uses the external to show you what needs to be adjusted. Thus, the reason why you cannot escape certain circumstances and situations in your life. That's why you keep coming around to the same thing, because there is a subconscious belief about you that is backfiring in your subconscious, that at the very core of who you are is attached to spiritual intention or spiritual intuition that is whispering to the surface and projecting outwardly and looking back at you through your life experience in time, space, and matter, what needs to be aligned, what you settled for at a conscious level that later became repressed as subconscious lies that you believed about yourself. And so thus the reason for this to come forth. So the Father has wired your matrix perfectly to where you actually cannot screw it up, because the more you attempt to, or the more you resist truth because you're not getting it, because you have emotional pain, the more the external situations choke you until Your subconscious mind that is holding the lens of lie-based thinking can now relinquish its right to try to manage its pain. Now it begins to let go of that and consider itself going, hey, this ain't working no more. My escapisms worked great for the last decade, but they're no longer working. And emotion is just breaking out of me on all sides. This is a good thing, because your mind is starting to understand that it cannot protect itself, and now it has to reveal itself to realign itself. And when it's realigned and we utilize the subconscious that's projecting outwardly as space, time, and matter, because that's what we've concluded on, as we take that as our friend, our teacher that is doing this process, the end of the matter will be our mind will relax. It will no longer be threatened by the outward environment, and the veils will begin to peel back, and we'll begin to discern within the visible realm that that tree over there in the field that I just sat under to get its shade was also a tree of righteousness of me gazing in to show that I'm strong enough to walk through what I'm walking through. Because now I'm realizing everything in the physical is the kingdom is likened unto this, and the kingdom is likened unto that, where we tend to get signs and wonders and confirmations and these types of things in our life externally is actually the subconscious giving us a hint that there's more to your visible realm than it appears, that there's a deeper revelation hidden within the visible. Okay, let me give you a couple scriptures here. I want to read you 3 scriptures. Hey Kate, good to see you. Good to see Elaine and Nicholas. I don't know who else is on here. And Daniel, bless you guys. And Cherie, bless you. Love you guys. Appreciate you for coming on. Let's go to Genesis. So we have three scriptures I'm going to read. Let me start with the first one here. This is in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, I've taught on this multiple times. I'll just give you a quick overview, and you can go to some of my other videos. Good to see you, Jen. Some of my other videos, and you can get the full unveiling of this. But in the beginning, that word beginning has nothing to do with the beginning of time or space or matter. This is actually, the word beginning has nothing to do with the beginning of anything. It actually has to do with consciousness. Okay, and it has to do with the first fruits. It has to do with the masculinity of God. It has to do with the seed of God. So that which is breaking forth into awareness in God as God, and that word created or made, some verses say God made man in his image, or God created. That word created is, and I don't ask me to pronounce it, but basically what it means is, it means manifested, squeezed out, ordained, fattened. Squeezed out, manifested, ordained, or fattened. Okay. So it's not God creating something out of nothing. It's God becoming aware of himself at another level, or in another consciousness, in another angle of view, very closely connected to the name Me Elohim, which is connected to Elohim, which is also connected to what angels are in Psalms, where it says he made him a little lower than the angels. It's really hard to find this when you Google it. So, and I'll be perfectly honest, Strong's Concordance isn't very accurate. It's still written based in the mindset of the people that wrote it and their perspective, rather than without prejudice. And so you're going to have to dig into the layers of root words and unused roots. And you'll find that Elohim is connected, and Me Elohim. Elohim is many as one, but Me Elohim is God in the many as the one, looking at himself in another form, or in a mirror reflection. Okay, this is where we go from seeing dimly to face, right? And so in the masculinity of the seed of the first fruits of God, or that which is gathered to be manifested in consciousness and in diversity, this is the manifestation of the heavens and the earth. And the heavens and the earth is not two worlds. The heavens and the earth is a state of being and levels of consciousness. So you are heaven and you are earth, or you are spirit walking through a visible experience. So there are layers to this and there are angles to this. It's not just one way, it's all of these ways, so that it applies to whether you're in the giving, you're in the receiving, you're in the timeline version of the journey, or you're in the now embrace of eternity. Okay? The earth was without form, and so the earth is still without form. That'll blow your mind, because the only form you are experiencing is a framework in your consciousness that is creating an allegory that appears in form for an expression in which God exceeds himself. Now, the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who believe is not God turning up the volume so we can feel better, or God just answering a prayer to help us in our dilemma. We think it's that. We think, oh, God just got really big. Oh, God just showed up. No, we became aware of what has always been. And in that awareness of what has always been, we are experiencing a formation based on the lens in which we have concluded. And so, again, there's nothing wrong with experiencing the visible. I think it's all on purpose. But it comes down to becoming entangled in it as our ultimate reality. So once it's no longer our ultimate reality and we're simply gazing in, we are wisdom who built her house, crying out to the simple-minded version of our visible selves. Then we begin to look beyond the visible that holds us captive and feeling threatened by storms, kind of like the disciples. Jesus, save us, we're going to perish, as they're in a storm and he's asleep on a pillow, because he isn't in a storm. He's in the throne room, or he's within the throne, which is really not even a throne. That's another allegory. But he's within the very heart of the Father, in which is the lightnings, thunderings, and voices, or the movement of subconscious, the movement of the mind of God. When you read about in the book of Revelation, where John is talking about, and out of the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices, you're seeing the subconscious. You're seeing the light of thought moving between synapses. All through vibration and sound that is releasing subconscious voice, which is releasing the still small voice of the spirit. So this is the inner dialogue. This is you as light moving within the minds, between the synapses. But even those synapses are other versions of you that are looking at each other in multiple layers and dimensions of a multiverse in which you are having a divine exchange. We read in Psalms, one generation shall declare to another the works of God. And we're looking at it as the previous generation helping the next. And in one form, we're experiencing that allegorically externally, but in another form, it is the synapses of another version of me as wisdom crying out to the simple-minded version of me in a human experience in which both are simultaneously outside of me, gazing in upon me and through me and with me. Okay? Now that'll make your head spin, but you are more than yourself. And if you're aware of yourself, and if you're self-aware, which version of you is looking at that awareness? Well, there's a version of you that seems invisible and untouchable and untangible that seems to become aware of another version of you that is. So there you go, wisdom building her house, okay? So the waters here on the face of the deep, these waters are not wet waters like you think. These waters are frequencies known as the subconscious mind. So you have the subconscious and you have the face coming out of the subconscious, which is that which has become conscious in visibility. So we have the subconscious that is ever living in the divine intentions and momentum of the infinite, invisible realm of God. That is spirit. And you have the conscious, which is that which is now becoming aware in an expressive finite scenery of visibility that which is divine or subconscious. Okay. And so that face coming up from the waters is the visible expression of consciousness in the mind that is expressing outwardly, that is being mirrored back to you through the external visible realm that is really your subconscious, known as waters, okay, or known as frequency, or also, as Sherry just said, known as, and it's many layers, the chemicals even within your brain, okay? And we are made out of what? Physically, 85, 80 something percent water, okay? And our mindset and our ability to perceive is coming out of that hydration that is causing chemical reactions in which we have consciousness. So we have it at all levels. We have chemicals within the brain. We have that which is of the gases and outer space, and we have a trinity of trinities here. And then we have time, space, and even within space we have measurements of length. We have width and height. Of course, depth is mentioned, I believe, in Ephesians when it talks about the love of Christ, that we can know the love of Christ, the length, the width, the height, and the depth. And so once you begin to get into the deep, you're now realizing the spirit hovering over the face of the waters or over the deep of the waters. This is where deep calls unto deep at the sound of his waterfalls. And those waterfalls are not the same as our visible experience. Those waterfalls is out of your belly flowing rivers. It's coming from another realm. It's where the tree of life is on this or that side of the river. The river that's flowing out of the throne is coming from within. It's coming from within the intentions of divinity. Okay. And so you'll find that, again, if you want to see a confirmation of this, you can skip all the way down to, let's see, I believe it was verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And so this is the gathering into an awareness of space and time in which visibility begin to emerge. Now, the gathering together is the many as the one that's manifesting as individuality, but is really diversity of one. But we're experiencing it on a reduced level. Now, again, don't knock the reduced level. Okay, we don't have to think the reduced level is an interruption. It's actually all part of the extension that is bringing forth God exceeding himself through becoming self-aware. So God becoming aware of himself exceeded himself by manifesting himself as the many in mankind's formation in order to gaze at upon himself and to exceed himself through dimensions of himself that were hidden from himself, because the environment of invisibility and expansion without limitation prevented dimensions of himself from being expressed. Mercy, grace, goodness, aspects of unconditional love needed an environment that would appear limited to manifest the unlimited realm of God in order for God to exceed through expression, and in order for God to seek out his own heart in the manifestation of himself, to journey through himself, to not come to the end of himself in knowing all things. Now, if you can't understand that, just stand under it and drink it, because it's all by divine encounter that we're realizing this anyway. Okay, let's go to another scripture here. All right. And this one is in Proverbs. There's a couple of them here I want to show you. So again, looking at this allegorically in Proverbs chapter 3, we'll see, I believe it's verse 19. Let's look at let's go back a few verses here. It's talking about wisdom. Verse 13 says, happy is the man that finds wisdom and the man that gets understanding. Okay. Now, we can look at this at a level of, wow, my subconscious mind, in which is my communion with God, has now thrown into my consciousness to match with my situation, because my situation externally has now drained my ability to manage my pain subconsciously, and the veil's been torn enough for the subconscious realm of the mysteries of Christ to emanate as an answer to give me peace that my circumstance around me is actually aiding me, not hurting me. And in this, I find wisdom. Now, I can find that in my mind at one level, an epiphany of something in my life, or I can find it in the whole spectrum of the generations of the heavens and the earth as one man, which is me, which is seen in everybody and is echoing out as a journey, but is now me talking to me as a second party to myself, if I could put it that way, which is wisdom crying out to itself in the human experience. All right. So happy are we when we find our identity in eternity, and when the subconscious is able to break through, because we've had enough outward contradictions to tear the veil of our conscious conclusion that we repressed, to hold our subconscious captive and to prevent us from seeing the mysteries of Christ hidden subconsciously. Okay. So happy is the man that finds the intentions of building a house known as the human experience, in which all the intentions of God are. Okay. For the merchandise of it, verse 14, is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. So now what we're seeing here is that wisdom and understanding in this context is not based in anything you can obtain in your humanity that is external from you, as though you lacked anything, and that it's really pointing to that which is within, and that which is identity based, that which is intentional. Okay, so it has nothing to do with the visible realm in what you're getting. It has to do with an unveiling of who you are. And it says in verse 15, she's more precious than rubies. All things that you can desire are not to be compared. So there's no comparison. There's nothing earthly about it. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand is riches and honor. I want you to see this. You already had length of days. This is connected to Psalms 139. You are holding your future human experience, if I could put it that way, even though it's all happening simultaneously. But let's look at it for the sake of those that are having a hard time grasping it outside of an earthly grid, and kind of using the parable form here. From whence you came, as Jesus would say, I know from whence I came and where I go. The Son of Man that came from heaven and is in heaven. So he's given a quantum entanglement, revelation there of being in multiple places in that sense. But imagine you in Psalms 139, where all your members were written in the book when there was yet none of them, and all your tears were in a Bible or in a bottle beforehand. All right. So length of days is in your right hand. Do you see how that connects? You already saw everything you would walk through, and the tears you would shed in the timeline were set aside as the cup of his affirmation and love, and what made it worth it to be sent as Jesus was sent. And so you have length of days, you have tears in your bottle, you have all your members written in the book in one hand, and you have riches and honor in the other, which is understanding the reason why you're going, which is the expansion of the expression of divinity, of unconditional love. Okay. Now that expansion, which is as riches and glory, is seen in Ephesians 1, not as that which I can obtain because I came with it, but that which was divinely exchanged between us. As Malachi says, we spoke often one to another, and a book of remembrance was written. As Philippians says, our conversation is in heaven. Okay, so this was the agreements we made in our divine exchange with one another to walk out each other's journey, so that at the appointed time, we would then begin to manifest what we thought was sorrow and tears as affirmation and glory. We would now bring forth the proof of it, right? And so this is what's actually going on. And so it's just this wonderful, amazing revelation of Ephesians 1, where the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him has now broken open the riches of the glory of the saints, the riches of the glory of the saints, of the inheritance that is in us, that's now coming out of us in the divine exchange, when we finally meet each other face to face in our human or in our manifestation of mankind. We are now realizing the aha moment of one mind's subconscious, the divine mind of God, that is now us moving as synapses and firing back and forth a conscious awareness of expression, of realization, of manifestation. So in one sense, all the synapses in your mind is you in divinity, in eternity, as wisdom crying out into your consciousness, which is the water and the face. But at the same time, we are all these different thoughts and synapses within the subconscious of one mind that is now exchanging riches and glory and inheritance, that's becoming conscious. All right. Hey, you guys want the meat, right? So here we go. All right, now let's skip down here. Her ways, verse 17, her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. All her paths are peace. I want to stop there for a minute. Your neural pathways, when you lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge him in all your ways, and he shall make straight your path, is based on what? It says it in the New Testament. It says that the peace of God shall keep your mind and your heart in Christ Jesus. So all the neural pathways in wisdom is peace. In your subconscious, underneath the layer of the conclusion of consciousness that got stuffed over, and the dividing of preventing your subconscious from communicating with you, is your triggers. It's the lies you believe. But also hidden within your triggers is not just this great gulf in between heaven and earth, if I could put it that way, or heaven and that which appears to be hell, because it's being viewed consciously into the subconscious by seeing triggers. So all we see is lies. That's our hell. And then from the subconscious, trying to break through is also carrying the scent of those lies we believe, which consciously we're having a hard time believing them. So the subconscious then says, let me just project it outwardly for you to get it inwardly, so that I can exhaust the thinking mechanisms of your mind that are constantly trying to evaluate and distract from the pain, to where now you have to look at it, you have to deal with it, you have to transmute it. So there's this divine exchange going back and forth, and it is the paths of peace, or as we would call it, the stem of Jesse, the root and the offspring of David, which is what? The 7 spirits of God. And his delight was in the fear of the Lord, and he didn't judge by eyes or ears, but in righteousness, going inward. Again, the stem of Jesse, pathways. We're dealing with pathways of the mind. We're dealing with synapses. We're dealing with perception. We're dealing with the firing of spiritual momentum that's moving at the speed of light, flowing through its consciousness, manifesting gray matter, manifesting form for us to relate to. But that form, time, and space actually do not exist. They don't exist in actuality. They are projections of a backdrop in order for the finite experience of mankind to begin to understand and wake up to divine things. So a coming together and an emerging into the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Okay. And then it goes on. The key verse that I wanted to get here is verse 19, where it says, no, actually, let me read verse 18. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retains her. So it isn't some tree of life separate that Adam and Eve are eaten of. The tree of life is the same. It's another it's you. And if you were to look inside your body, in your nervous system, it would look like a tree. So the tree of life is manifesting visibly within you, which is actually wisdom, who built a house. And the house is the experience of mankind in its diversity, that appears as individuality, that appears as a journey, but has actually already been fully lived out and embraced. But we are simply taking the slowed down aha moment of what has always been at the speed of light. Okay. So kind of like if you were to reminisce an experience you had and you were to re-experience that, just imagine the mind of God constantly re-experiencing a now moment of bliss and love, and that now moment is coming forth because there is a momentum of expression and even duality and even illusion that is now turning the wheels and allowing that aha moment to continue to expand. All of it is actually working together. And so the Lord by wisdom has founded the earth, and by understanding he has established the heavens. All right, so remember, wisdom built her house. The house, unless the Lord builds the house, those that labor, labor in vain. So you didn't come here to build a house. You came here to understand why you built a house as wisdom, who already built a house, slayed her beast, set her table, and sent out her maidens. She hewn out her 7 pillars. A righteous man falls 7 times, but then rises again. 7 is the number of completion, perfection, the number of rest, the 7th day. And so you'll find that everything that you're walking through here, you're not building anything. You're coming into the why behind the what of what was built and labored in by the Spirit, and that you're just simply here in the adventure of unveiling the why behind the what of that built, of what was built. Okay, so again, it removes from you all need to perform, to measure up, to do something, to be something, to get something, or to get somewhere. Okay, and so by wisdom he founded the earth. So everything wisdom built in eternity was everything you're going to experience at a visible level. That which wisdom hid, where she hewned out the 7 pillars, she hewned them out. Now, hewing out isn't just carving the external. Pillars are hollow. Okay, and so what did wisdom put inside the pillars? Well, a renewed mind. Every aha moment you would need to match every contradictory aspect of your life that would now bring the proof of grace and goodness and glory and unconditional love that can now manifest in a dimension of visibility, which is simply an illusion of the subconscious mind projecting out waters and frequency to present a face in it, so that your mind can now expand in that which God sent you to expand in, of that which invisibility could not manifest except it had a visible manifestation. And then by understanding, he established the heavens. So I want to go into understanding for just a minute. So when you go to Proverbs chapter 8, it talks about the sister of wisdom. Now, all of these are you looking at you in the mind of God, in divinity, having an aha moment that's actually simultaneously being manifest as you getting an answer to prayer, having a divine encounter, getting a prophecy fulfilled, or a promise, or a miracle. It's all actually an aha moment of wisdom building her house. Now, before I go into this one on Proverbs chapter 8, let me just say that these 7 pillars that have been hewn out, in Revelation, it says that he that overcomes shall become a pillar in the house of his God, and he shall go out no more. Now, we're not out anyway. There is no separation. But we come to the end of the lie of separation that is not just a theological thing, but also a historical conclusion of where we believe in our memories that that there's something wrong with us. It's transmuting memories. And that's why we do the shift training and shift process, which eventually becomes a shift lifestyle, in which you now shift out of the illusion of conclusion and lie-based thinking into the experience of that which has always been in Christ. Okay, and everything is working for you, right? Okay, and so you are a pillar in the house of your God, and you go out no more. Why? Because you're now living as a habitation. You're living outside of the lie of separation, or separation is now living outside of you, and you realize there's nothing outside of you to be separated from. And that everything that appears to be separated is somewhere inside of you where you need to reconcile with yourself. All right? Now, understanding is what built the heavens. So you have that which is designing spiritual reality that is going to be utilizing visibility to manifest itself as the waters, as subconscious becoming conscious through an environment that is really an illusion looking back to you, as an allegory for you to begin to wake up and discern who you are. And so in chapter 8, I'll just kind of start reading in verse 22. It says, the Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. So again, you see, this is before the works of old. And where are the works of God? Well, in Hebrews, his works were finished from the foundation of the world. So this would be, again, an in the beginning, which is really a before the beginning, in the intentions of the why behind the what, before it began to manifest as an expression. And it says, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was, before a visible manifestation, before consciousness, where subconscious was living as consciousness, okay, before it was divided by duality into our minds as conscious and subconscious, okay, all right. And so I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was, when there was no depths, I was brought forth. Now, what do you mean when there was no depths? The depths here are referring to the depths that are, and this is where the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who believes, where God exceeds himself or expands himself from invisibility to visibility. This is where you see the depths broken up. This is more than just something back here that is better than our visible experience. It's actually the visible experience that is carrying the depths of the expression of what eternity could not manifest without the dualistic realm of expression. So again, everything is made beautiful in its time. And it in its time has to do with consciousness. It also has to do with appointed times, and it doesn't have anything to do with linear time, even though we might experience it in our conclusion of time being linear, if I could put it that way, okay? And it says, when there was no depths, I was brought forth, when there was no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. And that's where you see the waters on the deep that is not actually water, but a bringing forth of the very frequency and intention of the Father, okay? Or the intention of Source, God, however you want to put it. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world, or he had not yet manifested that which was hidden within him, known as the bosom of the Father, that we are now manifesting or operating in as being in his hand, of which we cannot be plucked out. That is our journey in this dimension. So we're experiencing on a journey on one level, within his hand on another level, within his bosom, before the depths were brought forth. Okay. Then it says, verse 27, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass on the face of the depth. Remember, there was a face on the waters, or the face of the deep. So that is also known as a compass. So this had to do with a direction divinity was going to slow down, to bring forth manifestation and expression. It's really beautiful when you realize that all the scriptures are really about that which is within you, that which is the internal dialogue. Jesus talking to the Pharisees. Now, again, I'm not negating history or actual events happening that people wrote about. What I'm saying is, go deeper beyond the surface of the Pharisees persecuting Jesus and realize where your ego is still religious as a Pharisee persecuting your sonship, and go inward and realize it's your own dialogue. Realize that people around you that are attacking you are only attacking what you've rejected about you, if it affects you. And if you're not rejecting you and you're like, that's not true, I don't reject myself, then enjoy the external rejection that can't affect you, because it can only affect you. And the only reason you want it to stop and think it's wrong is because there's something in you that believes that is in self-rejection. So, here's the deal. When you don't have it internally, you don't really care what's going on externally, because you're seeing the beauty of what the Father's using in the midst of it to let the seed die to bear much fruit, to break open that mindset. Man, I'm getting excited. All right, so now let's go down a little bit further here. It says here, I'm going to skip down to verse 30. Then I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him. Now, you've got the formation of the generations of the heavens and the generations of the earth. Again, spirit slowed down to visibility, heaven and earth, subconscious and conscious, two trees in the garden, however you want to put it, even light and darkness. Okay? That which is a mystery hidden in the subconscious, and that which is consciously aware of that which is hidden. You have darkness and light. Okay? You have the dividing of darkness and light. You have the dividing of your mind through duality. Okay? So there's a lot in there for that. Okay? I was going to go somewhere with this. Let me see if I can remember where I was going with this. Oh, so where you're beside him in this doesn't mean you're separate from him as a second entity in this verse. You being beside him is God pulling out of himself the mirror reflection of the me Elohim mirror, in which he is gazing at himself in a mirror. Everything in scripture that is about identity, don't you know that God himself has experienced this? He looked into a mirror dimly, but then face to face, right? Righteousness looks down from heaven, Psalms 85, and truth springs up to the earth, that glory may dwell on our land. Righteousness and peace have met and kissed. Why? Because there's a divine convergence of God reconciling within himself that which he hid from himself, so that he could never come to the end of himself in being all-knowing. But even though he knew all things, he hid what he always knew, pieces of it, from himself, so that he would never come to the end of himself in knowing it all, because he never ends. Because one cancels out the other if both are in full swing. So one has to be a mystery. So God is also getting a revelation of himself, because he's not limited in knowing himself. Therefore, he can hide himself from himself and have the adventure of himself and discovering himself in and through the visible image of you, or your expression known as mankind. Okay? And so this is where you're appearing beside him. That's the generations of the heavens. And then you have the generations of the earth. It's not two separate people. It's two levels of consciousness. It's the generations of the earth is that which is earthly minded, that which is entangled with the cares of this life, that which is walking through a journey of the schoolmaster, or a journey of opposites known as darkness, so that this darkness can now eventually become the backdrop of the proof of light and expression coming out of it, to show that who you are was never affected through it or by it. So we're all coming into that. And so it goes on and it says that in verse 9, I was his delight, verse 30. I was his daily I was his delight, rejoicing always before him. Verse 31, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth. I want you to get this for a minute. Well, isn't the whole earth habitable? Why is it divided up into a part? Because it is not about a physical earth. The habitable part of the earth is spirit that is manifesting in this dimension as subconscious, that is waters in which you are becoming conscious as a face and an expression coming out of a mystery hidden, known as Christ in you, the hope of glory, or as 2 Corinthians 4 would say, God commanding darkness, or commanding light out of darkness to shine the glorious gospel of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And we have this treasure in earthen vessels, right? And in Isaiah, we have treasures in darkness. So connect the dots here, because it's actually pretty amazing that the rejoicing is within the kingdom. It's within the spirit. It's within heavenly places where all blessings are. It's within the bliss of true origin and identity. That's the habitable part, because there is no other part to be habitable. It is simply a habitable part that is being projected as a world. And yet our worlds, the worlds, plural, which is every possible level of consciousness, from divinity to mankind's perception, from lower frequency to high, it is every possible way of seeing the plurality of these worlds of consciousness, which are in Hebrews 12, I believe, or is it? I think it's Hebrews 11, that the worlds were framed by the Word of God, and that framework is what has been what wisdom built in the framework of your identity in divinity, that was never lost but was hidden, that would eventually be remembered, known as a book written, known as all your members written in that book, known as the book of the life of the Lamb, not the Lamb's book of life, but the life of the Lamb, which is also the books were opened, which is the plurality of diversity as one man, but seen as individuality. So there's so much there. And so this is where you are delighting, and your delight is with the sons of men. Your delight was to slow down divisibility, to put on a finite mindset, to put on duality, to put on amnesia. Because when your divinity that's indestructible and knows all things, you can take a part of yourself, put it beside yourself, and lose yourself, to seek out yourself, to discover yourself, to embrace yourself, to unveil yourself in ways in which divinity could not manifest otherwise. I love it. All right. Now, you had a question, Oz3, if I'm saying that right. Let's put it up here. How do we access the subconscious clearly? Meditation. All right. You can access it anytime you want through meditation, through breathing, through focus, but you're also going to be gazing at that through the layers of undealt with trauma or memory. So the key here is to experience it through those lenses. And in that, this is what we end up doing. We experience spirituality and a level of truth through duality, therefore it's twisted, and it spurs us to perform, to measure up. It begins to target those triggers. So then we get all excited, God's called me to do this. And usually at that level of trigger-based lies that we're experiencing the subconscious through those lenses, we're seeing a twisted image of the true. And so we start there. That kind of begins the pursuit of the need to measure up, which is exposing, in which we measure up pretty good for a while until we run out of human ego fuel, and we begin to run out of gas, which we throw our temper tantrum, we freak out, we throw in the towel, we quit, we experience double-mindedness, which is actually that layer over the subconscious triggers starting to tear. It's starting to weaken. So that's usually where we started. And to be perfectly honest, that's the beginning of your meditation. So you've been meditating the entire time. You're just not conscious of it. And then it begins to bring us to the tearing of the veil, to the letting go of these triggers as circumstances press against our belief system, until finally we just let it go and we realize there's no way out. We have to face it. Once that has been brought captive and truth springs forth in that area, you will now begin to experience not just a meditation, and you'll probably hit an in-between place where you don't know that you actually are the epitome of the meditation of God in visible form. I mean, if I could say that God is spirit in invisibility is meditating right now, and your human experience is actually the manifestation of meditation, that would be the higher realm of consciousness. But we don't usually start there. What we usually start with is we meditate in methodology, which is nothing wrong with that. We use placebos. We breathe, we focus, we imagine, we become aware, and we're still seeing it kind of in this allegorical, seen dimly place. But even there, it's blowing our minds. So imagine what happens when you experience plain speech outside of allegorical view and methodology in the very heart and intention of divinity. Okay? So you are going to step through some of the levels and layers of methodology that will work for a while until you graduate from it and you realize, you know what? I needed that to bridge because I know in part and I prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part is done away with. So the key here is your consciousness walking through the journey of your belief system until everything that you think was defiled and ugly and no good and regretful is now beautiful and perfect. And in that beautiful, perfect realm in which you're experiencing the fruit presently by feeling the pain in the past and transmuting it, what happens is you now begin to experience it in the visible realm. And you go, well, that's not so bad. Let's go deeper. And eventually your mind levels out and you're no longer operating and responding out of the memories of your human experience lens. You begin to break open the door behind your earthly journey or experience, and you begin to tap into the eternal intention, in which you then begin an allegorical experience of that in the form of angels and throne rooms and scrolls and trumpets and water and frequency and color. And even that is simply an allegory that's leading you to even a more plain speech of the being of God in the very intentions of the why behind the what. Okay? And so this is where we're going. So you have wisdom who built a house for the earthly experience, for the visible realm, or for your consciousness, and you have understanding that bore witness to the intention of everything that would be unveiled as visibility, that is the subconscious. And both of those are happening in your mind, not as a mind, but as you working behind the scenes, presenting a mind that another version of you in a personality known as ego is walking out the give and take of that expression that goes along with Colossians 3, where it says, put your mind above where you died, so that when Christ, who is your life, is revealed, you shall be revealed with him. The you with him is the adopted ego, where God breathed into man and he became a living soul. It is the ego additive as the binoculars to begin to view, and to even begin to view wrongly on purpose in the illusion until enough backdrop has been placed through contradiction for divinity to now reveal itself in the expression of the opposite, that now causes your ego to come subject as your helpmate and now becomes a communicator of divine mystery for others to begin to wake up. And that is, your ego is the seat of the personality of this expression or this manifestation of you that's kind of expressing out from a completely different source, if I could put it that way, but yet not separate and all slowed down at different speeds to manifest visibility. So I know that this was a lot to take in, but that's why this is called Heavy Revy TV. And this is just the beginning of the unveiling of what the Father is bringing to us so that our minds can begin to relax in the journey. We're no longer distracted by trying to do something to be something, or shadow boxing with ourselves, and we can actually operate in the mind of Christ. So I hope this word has blessed you. Please like and share it with some family and friends that need an extra boost. And you know what? We always think people aren't ready for this stuff. The best way to get them ready is to go ahead and throw them in the deep and let their face begin to emerge. Amen. And if this teaching and message has blessed you, check out our website. We've got a whole bunch of other resources on the teaching page at www.foggum. It's on the top right above me, foggm.org. And feel free to also make a donation if you'd like to sow. We are a faith-based ministry, nonprofit, and all the funds that come in help us come to you, continue to come to you, help us travel when we're traveling, and help us to minister to those locally as well. So we just want to say thank you for all those that have been a support to us and continue to be. We appreciate you. You keep us doing this full time so that we can touch as many hearts as possible and help a lending hand, almost like the Samaritan. You know, we're kind of like the Samaritan. We see a bunch of people beat up, stuck on the side of the road, or you know, they're just observing their life on the side and incapacitated because they feel life has beat them up. But we're kind of sent to pick them up and just pour some oil of love and revelation into their wounds and take them into wisdom's house, where they can take a break there and encounter the eternal and come into the revelation that nothing is in vain, that nothing is lost, and that there is no regret and there is no separation. So we just love you and we bless you and we appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we're going to see you again Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love you all. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.